Romans chapter 13 says in verse 1, "Let every soul be subject unto the higher powers, for there is no power but of God. The powers that be are ordained of God. Whosoever therefore resisteth the power, resisteth the ordinance of God, and they that resist shall receive to themselves damnation." For rulers, now this passage, in Romans 13 is about, government, how basically government, God created the government, and as, it shows here, so the concept of government is good. Sometimes wicked leaders get in there and do wicked things, but the concept of government, is good. God created government for, like verse 3 says, "For rulers are not a terror to good works, but to the evil," right? They're, punishment of evildoers and things like that. So, Romans 13, it's in that context. Now, Romans 13, I feel like a lot of people aren't going to like Romans 13 because so many people, they hate the government. They like to talk bad about the government, and they just complain about the government, and and even be like, in some cases, not submit to what God has commanded us to submit to, because it says, in 1 Peter 2, right? 1 Peter 1, 1 Peter 2. I'm not sure where it is. 1 Peter 2. 1 Peter 2 and verse 13. It says, "Submit yourselves to every ordinance of man for the Lord's sake, whether it be to the king as supreme, or unto governors, as unto them that are sent by him for the punishment of evildoers, and for the praise of them that do well." So, specifically the beginning of verse 13, "Submit yourselves to every ordinance of man for the Lord's sake." So, people might not like the government, they might not like the laws, but they should still submit for the Lord's sake. Obviously, if the law went against Christ's commandments, we ought to obey God rather than men. But it's very rare that we would say be sinning by keeping a law from the government. It can happen, but it's just, most of the time it might be a law we don't like, but not necessarily sin to obey it. So we should submit to every ordinance of man for the Lord's sake, right? And it said whether it be to the king as supreme in verse 14, or unto governors, right? So, and then people might say, well, in verse 14, or unto governors as unto them that are sent by him for the punishment of evildoers. Now, I think the context of that is like, if someone steals, then the government punishes them, or they should. But the thing is, I wonder if it could be used in another context as well, for the punishment of evildoers, because whenever there's wicked rulers in there, potentially the whole nation is punished. Well, what if the whole nation is wicked and evil, or most of it? So it's like, maybe a wicked leader gets in, and then, the economy gets destroyed, or people are afflicted in one way or another. They're afflicted. Well, maybe the whole country's being punished, and God's having them punish evildoers. Not in the terms of, someone broke a law, throw them in prison, or make them pay a fine, or whatever. but rather the whole nation is being judged or punished because the whole nation's evildoers. Something potentially, just an idea. So in verse 15, right? For so is the will of God, that with well-doing ye may put to silence the ignorance of foolish men, as free and not using your liberty for a cloak of maliciousness, but as the servants of God. Honor all men. Love the brotherhood. Fear God. Honor the king. And we can come back to this passage I think it's this passage. We can come back to this passage in a little bit. But going back to Romans 13, it says, right in verse 3 again, for rulers are not a terror to good works, but to evil. Wilt thou then be afraid of the power? Do that which is good, and thou shalt have praise of the same. For he is the minister of God, and doing good, do that which is good, and thou shalt have praise of the same. Well, what is good? Submitting to every ordinance of man for the Lord's sake, as we read in 1 Peter 2. So that would be an example of what's good. Obeying God's word in that. In verse 4, for he is the minister of God to thee for good. But if thou do that which is evil, be afraid. For he beareth not the sword in vain. For he is the minister of God, a revenger to execute wrath upon him that doeth evil. Wherefore ye must needs be subject, not only for wrath, but also for conscience sake. For this cause pay ye tribute also. For they are God's ministers, attending continually upon this very thing. In verse 7, render therefore to all their dues, tribute to whom tribute is due, custom to whom custom, fear to whom fear, honor to whom honor. So, verse 6 and 7, it's saying, in verse 6, for this cause pay ye tribute. Well, and rendering, in verse 7, render therefore to all their dues, tribute to whom tribute is due, custom to whom custom, and, So, when it comes to taxes, I don't think tribute and taxes are the same thing, because it uses the word tribute, but the Bible also uses the word taxes, so I think they're different things. But if we're supposed to give tribute, then why not taxes as well? And then people, God says to do this, so it's like if we should pay them tribute, then why shouldn't we be paying them taxes as well? So, and people complain about the taxes when it's like, well, here's the thing. If God said to do it, then why are you complaining about the thing God said to do? Like, do the thing God said to do and pay the taxes, but, he said pay tribute, but, which I believe would apply to the taxes as well, that we should be doing this, and for the Lord's sake, and have a good, and not be complaining while we're doing what God said to do. We should, God said to do it, so do it, type attitude. Now, people will argue, well, taxes in the United States are unconstitutional, or federal income tax, or whatever. And they'll argue whatever they argue, but it's like, it's like, let's see, what verse was I thinking of? I forgot, but they'll argue that, and then it's like, okay, well, whether that's the case or not, right? The thing is, it's like it's like let's see. I don't know what to say, so I'll just word it this way. Even if taxes are unconstitutional, it would still be in the United States, it would still be my recommendation to file and pay an income tax if you're required to at your income level, whatever. But because it's like, well, one, it's like what it said in verse 4, right? For he's the minister of God to thee for good. But if thou do that which is evil, be afraid, for he beareth not the sword in vain. So it's like he beareth not the sword in vain. Like there's going to be a punishment for that tax. And even if it's unconstitutional, like the Constitution could be amended, and like surely if it was like, oh, it's unconstitutional and no longer applies, it would be like, it would be very quick. Every political party would come together and be like, oh, it's unconstitutional, let's amend the Constitution and make it constitutional. We'll add an amendment, and the states will get together, the Congress will get together. They would just they wouldn't just say, oh, okay, now instead of a $2 trillion deficit, we're going to have a whatever $6 trillion deficit, whatever it would be, and let's just not have any type this taxes on income. Like they would just amend it. But so like effectively it's still I don't want to go too far into this, but effectively it's still like, whether it's constitutional or not, you'll still be punished for it, because there are people who do not file. They're just like, oh, there's no law saying I have to file, so they don't file, and then they go to court because it's like, hey, this person stopped filing. They end up going to court, and then it doesn't hold up in court. In the cases where it does get off, it's just because, of some technicality that the IRS messed up on. But it wasn't like, oh, you're right, it's unconstitutional. So, at least from what I've looked into, that's been the case. And, people have gone, the person for not filing, right? The thing is, let's see. So anyway, that be my recommendation, because it's like, whether it's constitutional or not, you're still going to be punished, right? And it's just like, and even if it wasn't constitutional, it's like, well, it says, render therefore to all their dues tribute to whom tribute to be due, and one of the things God told us would happen would be basically taxes in 1 Samuel 8. He said that would be something that happens. So he didn't use the word tax, but you'll see what it says in 1 Samuel chapter 8. In verse 10 it says, and Samuel told all the people, and Samuel told all the words of the Lord unto the people, and that asked of him a king. And he said, this is the manner of the king that shall reign over you. He will take your sons and appoint them for himself, for his chariots, and to be his horsemen, and some shall run before his chariots. And he will appoint him captains over thousands and captains over 50s, and will set them to ear his ground, and to reap his harvest, and to make his instruments of war and instruments of his chariots. And he will take your daughters to be confectionaries, and to be cooks, and to be bakers. And he will take your fields, and your vineyards, and your olive yards, even the best of them, and give them to his servants. So there we see the loss of possession that's going to come. And God shows this, right? In verse 15, and he will take the 10th of your seed and of your vineyards, and give to his officers and to his servants. So he's going to take a 10th. So that's basically like a tax. And it might not sound like a lot. Oh, it's only 10%. But that's gross. I'm pretty sure that's gross right there. So if you're, in poverty and you don't even make much, he's still going to take a 10th from you. It's more, if it's gross, then that is and you're farming as most people were back then, that's a lot bigger deal. So right in verse 16, and he will take your men servants and your maid servants and your goodliest young men and your asses, and put them to his work. He will take the 10th of your sheep. and ye shall be his servants. Ye shall be his servants. It's like, if they take half your income, that's like you worked 6 months for the government, assuming you worked a full year. If they take half your income, it's like you worked 6 months for the government. Well, what does it say? And ye shall be his servants, right? And ye shall cry out in that day, because of your king, which ye shall have chosen you. And the Lord will not hear you in that day. So this is, what shows, what's happening. So the government's going to take, right? And it's just like, it's part of what's going to happen. So to be like, it's these people who, it's like, as Christians, we're soldiers of Jesus Christ, and Paul, he fought the good fight of faith. We should be fighting the good fight of faith. We shouldn't be, as soldiers of Jesus Christ, not these political wars, not these, I want more money. And it's like, that one person who went to Jesus and was, I don't have the reference memorized, but went to Jesus and was like, Lord, tell my brother to divide the inheritance with me. And Jesus was like, who made me a divider, over you? And, beware of covetousness. For man's life consisteth not in the abundance of the things which he possesseth. If I, I'm paraphrasing, but I think maybe I mixed 2 verses, but I think it's all one passage. So it's like we don't want to be covetous. Here's an example, because it's like the taxes, right? Here's the thing. Luke 3. I bring up the taxes, as the main point, because that's people's biggest complaint usually is taxes. And it's like, here's the thing. In Luke 3, look what it says in Luke 3. It says, John the Baptist is preaching, right? And he tells them in verse 8, bring forth therefore fruits worthy of repentance, right? And then in verse 10, the people asked him, saying, what shall we do then? We want to bring forth those good fruit, right? And then he goes on and tells them, in verse 14, and the soldiers likewise demanded of him, saying, and what shall we do? And he said unto them, do violence to no man, neither accuse any falsely, and be content with your wages. It's a sin to not be content with your wages. I mean, all these other things are sin: doing violence, accusing people falsely, and you can read the whole passage, and see, there's good fruit, and there's the trees that don't bring forth that good fruit are hewn down and cast into the fire. But the good fruit is to keep the commandments. He's listing out the commandments in this passage, and he's telling them to be content with their wages. So it's like people, because of taxes, they're not content with their wages. Here's 1 Peter 2. We read 1 Peter 2, where it said in verse 13, submit yourselves to every ordinance of man for the Lord's sake. But later in the chapter, right, like in verse 17 we read up to, it says, honor all men, love the brotherhood, fear God, honor the king. And then in verse 18 it says, servants, be subject to your masters with all fear. And if we're servants to, like, to Saul, or to the king, right? Like in 1 Samuel 8, servants, right? Servants, be subject to your masters with all fear, and not only to the good and gentle, but also to the froward. For this is thankworthy, if a man for conscience toward God endure grief, suffering wrongfully. So for conscience toward God, we should endure grief, suffering wrongfully. So if taxes are wrong, well, we should take it patiently for conscience toward God, right? In verse 20, for what glory is it if when ye be buffeted for your faults, ye shall take it patiently? But if when ye do well and suffer for it, ye take it patiently, this is acceptable with God. For even hereunto were ye called, because Christ also suffered for us, leaving us an example, that ye should follow his steps. Who did no sin, neither was guile found in his mouth. Who, when he was reviled not again. When he suffered, he threatened not, but committed himself to him that judgeth righteously. who his own self bare our sins in his own body on the tree, that we being dead to sins should live unto righteousness, by whose stripes ye were healed. For ye were as sheep going astray, but are now returned unto the shepherd and bishop of your souls. So we should take it patiently for conscience toward God, right? And also in verse 13, it was for the Lord's sake, right? In verse 13, submit yourselves to every ordinance of man for the Lord's sake. So it's conscience toward God, the Lord's sake. That's why. So we should be content with our wages and take it patiently, instead of, bad-mouthing the government, because people complain and they bad-mouth the government. When 2 Peter, and they'll say evil things about 2 Peter 2, they'll say evil things about the government. But in 1 Peter 2, in 2 Peter 2, it says in verse 10, but chiefly them that walk after the flesh, in the lust of uncleanness, and despise government. Presumptuous are they, self-willed. They are not afraid to speak evil of dignities. We should be afraid to speak evil of dignities of these rulers that God has put in power, and maybe he put wicked people in there to judge, and the country's going to be, suffer for it, and the people are going to suffer. But what God decides to do is best, and He knows best, and we need to we should not be speaking evil of dignities, of leaders. We shouldn't be speaking evil of anyone, but especially the leaders. But because it specifically shows us here, not afraid to speak evil of dignities. Whereas angels, which are greater in power and might, bring not railing accusation against them before the Lord. So, okay, and then it says in Ecclesiastes 10:20, right? It shows us. Ecclesiastes 10:20. It says, curse not the king, no, not in thy thought, and curse not the rich in thy bed chamber. For a bird of the air shall carry the voice, and that which hath wings shall tell the matter. But it's telling us, curse not the king. So we shouldn't speak evil, we shouldn't curse them, and we should be content with our wages, and we should take it patiently. If they tax half our income, take it patiently for conscience toward God. So, and not complain about the thing God told you, showed us to do. People will be like, anyway, let's see, okay, so, I was looking for one in Luke as well, but, where he talked about render unto Caesar the things that are Caesar's, and unto God the things that are God's. And the money, he was referring to that being Caesar's. Just to take things patiently, and instead of fighting political battles, fight for the gospel's sake. God doesn't need money. And here's the thing: do you have food and raiment? Well, then be content if you have food and raiment. Be content with your wages. If you aren't content with your wages, you're sinning. And the thing is, like in 1 Timothy 6 maybe, right, it was 1 Timothy 6, but, it says in verse 6, but godliness with contentment is great gain. For we brought nothing into this world, and it's certain we can carry nothing out. And having food and raiment, let us be there with content. 1 Timothy 6:8. But they that will be rich fall into temptation and a snare, into many foolish and hurtful lusts, right? Which drown men in destruction and perdition. So it's, just for the love of money is the root of all evil, the love of it. Which while some coveted after, they've erred from the faith and pierced themselves through with many sorrows. So to be content, it's so crazy, because here's the thing. If you're in the United States and you make minimum wage, you are one of the richest people in the history of Earth. Okay? But people who make minimum wage or even more, usually people make more than minimum wage, and they make more than minimum wage, and they complain about they're not content with their wages when they're one of the richest people in the history the earth has ever seen, a minimum wage U.S. worker, and they're complaining. So it's just, it's crazy. And it's just like, all the appliances, it's like you have like these washing machines for your clothes. It's like, in the old days, you'd have to have a servant to wash your clothes for you. Now you just put the things in a washing machine and push a button, and you walk away and you come back and it's washed. It's like, we used to need servants for that. So it's like basically people have so many servants. They have a servant to wash their clothes, a servant to, they have rice cookers and Instapots and stuff, and a servant to cook your food for you, a servant to, how like in the, I don't know if it's the cartoons or something, they have like a king, and then there's like people holding a shade thing over them or fanning them, the king or whatever. Well, we have air conditionings or fans even, that a lot of people in the U.S., even poor people, use, but even if you don't use air conditioning, you still got a lot of luxuries. I don't know if luxury is the right word. Yeah, toilet, right? You just that's a. In Vietnam, I saw this video of this guy showing in Vietnam in his house, and his house had a toilet and a shower, and he said, "This is luxury," and he's like, "No, this is super luxury, super." Now, I mean, someplace. Vietnam's a very, very, it's a very big country. It's north to south, very big, 100 million people. Like it's not every. Some people in Vietnam, it's normal to have toilets and showers and things, but wherever this person was, it was super luxury, right? In that rural place that he was at, and it's just like, but Americans, the toilet, shower, like that's. Like this, there's so many things that people have, and comforts, and electricity, and all these different things, and it's just, and they only have to work like 40 hours a week or whatever, and then you can typically, unless you're like, I don't know, living some unusual lifestyle, you only have to work 40 hours a week, where people used to have to work like 6 or 7 days a week basically, and their workday was basically all day long, right? So it's just like people in the US and even in some parts of the world, so it's just like there's so many comforts, so many things. The minimum wage worker in the US, it's just like there's not even like a thought of, starvation or whatever. I mean, there shouldn't be for Christians because we have God's promises, but like it's just it's just they don't realize. I don't know, maybe they do, but it's just minimum wage worker in the U.S., one of the richest people in the history of the entire earth. And then they're like, I don't make enough. And then there's the people who make $60,000, $80,000, $150,000 or whatever. And then they're complaining about their wages. Not realizing that they're like, one of the richest people in the history of Earth. Have more luxuries and things than kings used to have. So it's just like the flesh is never satisfied; it always wants more. So they aren't content with their wages, and instead of taking it patiently, they curse the king, which God said, they curse the governors, they speak evil of dignities, they disobey God, they don't take it patiently for conscience toward God, they don't submit to themselves to every ordinance of man, they don't render to Caesar the things that are Caesar, they don't pay tribute, in verse 6, for this cause pay you tribute also. And if it's like in tribute, if that is like a gift to, then it's like, well, and I still want to study that more, but if tribute means like it's a gift that you give, like to show goodwill, if that's what tribute money was, saying that, then it's like, well, if we're supposed to do that, then how much more if we're supposed to do the voluntary thing, then how much more the thing that will potentially get you into a bunch of legal problems if you don't do. And how much more are we supposed to do that one if we're supposed to be doing this one willingly, right? Pay you tribute also. It's just like, God doesn't need the money, and you have food and raiment, and you're one of the richest people on earth. Stop complaining. And even people who aren't in the U.S., maybe maybe they really are poor, but people outside the U.S. But the thing is, you have food and raiment, be content. You have the promises of God, be content with just the promises. So anyway, be content. Don't curse leaders. Right. So verse 8. Owe no man anything but to love one another. For he that loveth another hath fulfilled the law. For this, thou shalt not commit adultery, thou shalt not kill, thou shalt not steal, thou shalt not bear false witness, thou shalt not covet. And if there be any other commandment, it is briefly comprehended in this saying, namely, thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself. Love worketh no ill to his neighbor, therefore love is the fulfilling of the law. And that, knowing the time, that now it is nigh time to awake out of sleep, for now is our salvation nearer than when we believed. The night is far spent, the day is at hand. Let us therefore cast off the works of darkness, and let us put on the armor of light. It's like, time is running out, and the focus is, shouldn't be, I want more money, when you already are one of the richest people on earth in history. But it shouldn't be, I want more money. It should be that God doesn't need the money. It should be, focusing on the Lord and fearing the Lord and keeping His commandments. And, as we just read a bunch of the commandments, and loving our neighbor and preaching the word and helping others preach the word, whatever, just serving God, whatever He's called you to do. We read about certain offices. I was going to say we read about certain offices yesterday in chapter 12, but I didn't upload the video for that because the audio didn't come out. I messed something up. So anyway, that's not on recording, but Romans 12 talked about the different offices. So, serve God with, in the thing, gifts with the gifts that God has given you. Focus on that, not on money, and, just take it patiently. So, anyway, in verse 11, I think, and that knowing the time, verse 13. Let us walk honestly, as in the day, not in rioting and drunkenness. So we want to walk honestly. And to be like, well, I'm just not going to file my taxes or whatever, and the government comes after you. But the thing is, it's just like we want to abstain from all appearance of evil, right? We're ambassadors for Christ, and even if it's unconstitutional, even if that is a valid argument, then it's still giving the appearance of evil, and we're supposed to abstain from all appearance of evil, because 99% of people, they're going to be like, you're being silly, you have to pay taxes. Even if you're right, it's still giving that appearance of evil, because 99% of people are going to think, oh, you're breaking the law, you're willingly breaking the law. So when you could just anyway, let's focus on what really matters. So let us walk honestly, as in the day, not in rioting and drunkenness, and not in chambering and wantonness, not in strife and envying, but put ye on the Lord Jesus Christ, and make not provision for the flesh to fulfill the lusts of the flesh, like that lust of money that people just aren't content with their wages. So anyway, I think I ended there. So, but study the Bible, put God first, or put God, stop, covetousness is idolatry. That's in Colossians 3, in verse 5. Colossians 3:5, right? Galatians, Ephesians, Colossians, okay, here we go. In 3 and verse 5, right, Colossians 3:5, it says, mortify therefore their members which are upon the earth, fornication, uncleanness, inordinate affection, evil concupiscence, and covetousness, which is idolatry. Covetousness, which is idolatry. So this covetousness of money and not being content with your wages, it's being idolatrous. You're idolizing money. You're putting money before God, or whatever it is that you're coveting after. But and also the things that I was saying, I was giving taxes as an example because that's the most common complaint, to complain about the government for taking your money. But here's the thing. There's other things as well. People are like, if it's not taxes, it's they complain about other things too, and it's just like we should just, like 1 Peter 1 talked about, if we do well and suffer for well-doing, and we take it patiently for conscience toward God, that's acceptable and that's good. And it's better to suffer for well-doing than evil-doing. It's like when we're weak, then we're strong, and 2 Corinthians 12 talks about. And covetousness, which is idolatry. So don't covet. Don't idolize money and put that before, or anything, put that before God. So don't do that. It says in verse 6, for which things sake the wrath of God cometh on the children of disobedience, in the which ye also walked sometime when ye lived in them. So verse 8, but now ye also put off all these things, anger, wrath, malice, blasphemy, filthy communication out of your mouth. Like cursing leaders, right? Calling them names, whatever. Saying, just complaining, just murmuring, don't covet. So, anyway, study. Don't idolize teachers. Don't just go video to video on the internet watching these videos. Take time to study the Bible and grow closer to Jesus Christ, and not rely on people for your relationship with Christ.